For those of you hanging out on stream today, huge shout out to Tequila Shots for the big raid, and then everybody just hanging out and having a good time. Had an absolute blast learning to heal as I prepare for what will be me hanging out with Xandri. We're going to do an interesting project Thursday, noon central, over on stream, so go check that out. We're going to be running some WoW content and 14 content alongside each other and kind of talking about our experiences, because we're both past WoW players that came to 14, still actively maintain subscriptions to WoW. So there's kind of a bit of a dialogue there about like, okay, why did we make the change, but like, why did we not fully switch over? Like, there's an ability where we kind of go back for certain aspects, and we'll talk about that. And then some of that will be on her channel, so link in the description below for all of that. But today I wanted to talk about the fact that that conversation and having everybody over today and learning new content and me leveling up a healer in 14 followed by a healer in WoW, really kind of naturally led to me talking about things that I wish one game did that the other game did. And that comes up a lot. As Brian and I post this week, we've already recorded all of the posts for this week because he's going to be out on kind of dealing with children. He's out on effectively paternity leave from content creation for the remainder of the week, so I assume he won't make anything else. We've just recorded Monday, Wednesday, and Friday's posts in this shirt, so hopefully you guys go enjoy those on our work to game. We talked a lot about 6.0. We talked a lot about what's coming, and so it naturally leads into that same subject. And anytime that subject comes up, it's really easy to get into the impression that maybe somebody's saying, I want this game to just be this other game, right? I just want them to copy pasta it in. And that's not actually the goal. Usually it's, I want to learn from them. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel if there's something else that's come across the same problem and solved it well. So when you're coming into things, you know, especially when comparing MMOs where they have a lot of the same problems, how do we introduce new players to the game? How do we level them up? How do we balance jobs? How do jobs run in a group? What's a group makeup? How do we deal with gearing? What happens when a quest giver gives you a quest? Is it fetch? Is it kill? Is it, you know, go use an item? What is the process there? What are the odd quests out that wouldn't be all the time, where maybe you use an item and it takes you into a mini game of some sort, be that a bombing quest or looking down the barrel of, you know, a turret that you're shooting or something like that? What happens if I put you in a vehicle? What do dungeon encounters feel like? What do raid encounters feel like, right? So as I've compared these games, like there's a number of these things that every MMO has a version of them. Every MMO, and those versions have overlap. They do. They quite naturally do. And 14 and WoW got the size that they are by doing it well, which means they've tapped into the thing that a large number of players want, which means they inherently have even more overlap than maybe somebody who really did go out of left field and then of course didn't experience the massive mainstream growth as a result. They are mainstream, and they have to funnel a lot of things into being palatable by the vast majority of players. And maybe there are some things, oh my gosh, I love that. And there are other things that I just tolerate, but it's all tolerable or above. And if it's not, we unsubscribe. So like that's the line that they both walk. They both only go so far from normal because they're trying to make sure that in order to satisfy this group of people, we don't make this people hate that so much that they literally quit because of that one thing, even though they liked a bunch of other stuff we were doing. So the worst case is they want somebody to feel like they either don't have to do a piece of content or like it's not that bad, it's just not their favorite. That's kind of the goal for the weak points of a game. And then everything else, they want to be stuff that people enjoy and engage and grip onto. And so as I say, like, oh wow, I think they handled this really well, I'm not saying that I want this other one to do it exactly the same way. It honestly probably wouldn't work. There are aspects of each game that are so integral. When we talk about one aspect, when we talk about what happens in Mythic versus Ultimate, funneling into that is, how do crafters interact with top-end raiders? How do dailies and weeklies interact with top-end raiders? What does PvP mean, if anything, to top-end raiders? What happens? How long does it take me from being a new player to being a top-end raider? There's all these questions when we compare top-end raiders that integrate and trickle down into the very fabric of what makes up the game as a whole. And so when you isolate any one thing, you couldn't just pick it up and move it, because there's all this supporting structure where it ties into every other system in the game that wouldn't be there. So you can't copy paste and have it feel good. What I'm saying is, like, the essence of that idea, how do we learn from it? If, for example, Final Fantasy XIV has what's called a limited job system. It's where you actually have a class in the game that is not bound by the normal rules of combat. Now, in trade for that, it cannot be invited into duty finder type, group finder type stuff, and it cannot run current tier. It has a level cap that is below to keep it from messing with people in current zones. And so it is kind of isolated off. But inside that world, it can integrate with any low level, any other class wants to come back to those levels and run that content with it. It can do crazy stuff, and it can be whatever it needs to be. When you think about what is a mage, what is a warrior, what is a priest, what is a paladin, these questions inside the battle system, that's their confines. That's the walls they have to be built within. So they can only do so much. A tank is responsible for having a certain amount of cooldowns and a certain amount of mitigation, and then has to be able to put out damage and a little bit of AoE. And that's regardless of what their lore and their fluff and their appearance and their feel and their texture is. They have to be able to meet the threshold of what a tank needs to be able to do to clear all content. And all content has to be structured with, it has to be runnable by any of the tanks, at least at a normal level. Maybe at the very top end level, the tuning gets a little off and certain classes are really hard to bring. Maybe it's not, ideally not. But like at a normal level, you should have the ability to level and run at a normal, regular difficulty, any content in the game with any class in the game. And that means that every class and every piece of content are inherently restricted by each other, because neither one can get so far outlandish that the other half can't meet that and then be fine. You can't have something that requires like a utility that only one class has, because what happens when a group gets into that content that doesn't have that utility? They just die and they can't clear it? That doesn't make any sense. But on the other hand, you can't have a class that, you know, oh, I picture warriors as like, you know, just gladiators with just swords and they're just running in and all that, and they have no cooldowns, and the first time a boss does a tank buster and slams the ground, the guy dies. That's not cool either. So like they have to respect each other. And so like when I say that these things should come over, when I say the brand new leveling experience that WoW came out with in 2019 is better than the leveling experience that was fine in 2013 for Final Fantasy, which they have since built numbers of systems that prove they've learned from it. First of all, that's not an offensive statement. Like, oh, wow, with 6 or 7 years of development, which is like millions of dollars and hundreds of minds, and the fact that you've played all the other games in the meantime, because devs play more than just their game, you thought of something better, that's not magic. Like, I would hope you're not worse than something that's, you know, in some cases a decade old in gaming. Like, I would hope that you're not like, you know, really, it's just never been as good as... No, like it should always be attempting to move the needle forward. There are times we miss that, but that should always be the goal. And so it's not shocking that it's better, but there's still things that 14 has that's unique. There's still things that 14 would be able to handle better about the leveling experience. Even in that initial play-in, there is still a level of music design that I think 14 has over WoW, that a starter zone could really set the tone. Imagine Soken saying, okay, how do I sum up all the emotions that a new player needs to feel? I think he's up to the task. When we talk about, you know, okay, what happens with these various quests and what are the scions and all these things, their starter zone in WoW, it's so gameplay focused that an initial story loop is, I'm going to present a problem. That problem's going to result in finding out that there's a big bad person. We're going to kill the big bad person, and it's going to loop around. But 14 is told narratives that are much, much longer. And like, yes, WoW has those and they tie all those mini loops together. But like 14, there's a reason that people get mad when you skip previous expansions. It matters. They don't just resolve themselves. There are things that are still going on. And so I think the ability to have that start to open up and just show how big and how long and how grand this story is in a short form would be inherently different. It would be. So even if they went out and said, we're just going to copy their content, even just the narrative element would immediately be different. Even just the music would be immediately different. Their trust system is way more powerful. Like when you talk about having had chocobos, followed by squadrons, followed by trusts. Meanwhile, WoW has had scenarios to teach them. That's it. Like 14 still has single player scenarios. Like the trust system is way more powerful, and then it can run all current dungeons single player that are tied to story. Imagine being able to run all 8 dungeons in Shadowlands with NPCs. There isn't any system that allows for that. And so to take that system back and say, we're going to use that system to teach you how to play your job, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And they already have written class quests, Hall of the Novice, role quests, all these things. And like, WoW has done some starter zones over the years and things like that. But like in many ways, 14 has had more iterations. They just haven't put them together. And so every piece of tech that would take 14 to one up what WoW just put in with pre-patch, they have all of the components. It's just about putting it together, and it would be unique, and it would be theirs, and it would introduce people to their game. It wouldn't introduce people to World of Warcraft. It wouldn't introduce people into playing MMOs in general. It would introduce to their game. So desiring a new player experience just because WoW got one doesn't mean that I want 14 to be WoW. If I wanted 14 to be WoW, I would just play WoW. Obviously, I'm playing 14. Obviously, I've come to 14 for something unique. Obviously, I've come to 14 because there are aspects of it that it does very well. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have weaknesses. That doesn't mean WoW doesn't have weaknesses. They both absolutely do. And I'm only mentioning these two games because these are the two I'm actively subscribed to, actively playing, actively covering on stream. But it's true of any two MMOs. There are overlaps. And I think that it's easy to expect when you start to talk about things you wish the other game would learn from, for it very quickly to evolve in, this system is better, and then I want the better system just straight up implemented. And every once in a while, especially with like UI design, that might work. Every once in a while, you might be able to literally just drag and drop. The transmogrifying menu, specifically the menu, could replace the glamour dresser in its entirety. I'm not talking about at a technical level that they have the ability to do that. I'm just saying at a user level, if I opened up my glamour dresser and it was the same as the transmogrify menu, it would be fine. If I opened up the character creator in WoW and I had the amount of capabilities that I do in Final Fantasy, it would be fine. That would be great. I enjoy that. If, there are aspects of this that you could literally port over, but you're usually talking about user experience. You're usually talking about the way an interface works, where buttons are. There are aspects of it that work. When you actually get into core systems, battle systems, loot systems, the way we build the world, narrative systems, it isn't that black and white anymore, because those start to be tied into so many things. So I just wanted to kind of come address that, because I think like it's easy for anybody new, and there are so many of you that are new. Thank you guys so much for all the support. It's easy to think that I want what the other game has to just come in and replace things. And that is not at all what I want. What I want is that I've seen somebody deliver at a top level, and I go, yeah, but what would it look like if you delivered at a top level, right? You have the world's best hamburger, and then you have this guy over here that makes pizza, and it's like, I want you to make the top level pizza. I'm not asking for you to put, a slice of cheese on a patty of meat on a pizza. That's not good. Like, I want you to make your thing, and I want you to make it at the same level that they're making it. And both games have areas where they hit it out of the park, and both games have areas where they fall short. And there are a million other games out there, and these devs have been more than open about games they're inspired by, and there are clear and apparent times when it feels like, man, there's no way they designed Torghast Tower without anybody being involved having touched Deep Dungeon. There is no way that the campaign quest got done the way it got done without anybody being aware that MSQ was a thing. There is just no way that these games aren't aware of what the other one's doing well. There just isn't. And we know that because the devs have talked about playing the other game. So like, we know that they play the other game, but like, that's not a bad thing. I mean, thank goodness. Imagine if they both had to invent a working party finder system in a vacuum and they couldn't learn from each other. There's no need for that. So thank goodness that out there in the open world, they can integrate and they can be passionate about gaming. And when there's something that moves gaming forward, they can all say, okay, I want to do that or better. I don't want to do my own thing from way back here to better. I want that to be my bar. So as good as that feels, mine might need to be different, but as good as that feels, I want my feature to immediately feel that good and that be my target. Whether or not I hit it is up for debate, but I want that to be my target. And I think that's something that I really like about these games. It's something I like about them having alternating release years. And I like that they can kind of play off of each other and they can learn from each other and they can do things that help shore up their weaknesses. I think it's one of the many reasons that they've both been around for the amount of time that they have. It's one of the many reasons that they have had the success and the active subscribership, viewership, fan base, community that they have built. And it just comes down to being aware of what's out there and then making your art as best as it can with whatever the best tools are. I see what they're doing. What I would do is a little different. And honestly, what my system demands is a little different. I'm going to go get to work. That's what I really like. And I feel it really shows in some of the systems that honestly Shadowlands and Shadowbringers have. Is it's iterative in nature in a way that moves the needle forward. And for that, I appreciate it. So just thought it was an interesting kind of topic. I'm going to get back to trying to do a Realm Revoiced, is I guess what I'm calling that series. I'll try to come out with those as fast as I can, but they take time, and I wasn't intending to start posting twice a day, but you guys seem really interested in the content, and I've got the energy right now, so I'm going to hit it as hard as I can and generate as much content for you guys as I possibly can for as long as you guys and for as long as the YouTube algorithm will have me. I am streaming under the same principle. I am trying to do as much of it for as long as it's fun, for as long as the community seems interested. So that is my plan. Work to Game has 3 videos going up this week. I don't know if Brian's personal Ginger Prime, I don't know if that got any love, but he is out there. So if you guys want, go subscribe over to his channel, say hello. He's covered all sorts of stuff. He's been covering Outriders. I mean, he covers all sorts of stuff. So go over there. He's got controller guides for WoW's native controller support. Of course, that's where a lot of the controller guides for 14 are now living. So go over there and say hello to Brian. The link down below will be first our Twitch channel so you can see us live. Then below that it'll be Xandri's so that you guys can prepare for our collab this week. It'll be her Twitch channel, then her YouTube channel, and below that will be Brian's YouTube channel. Go take part in any and all of that. It's absolutely wonderful places that I've really kind of enjoyed the content that's going out there. Of course, I'm biased because I already like both those people, and so liking their content isn't a huge extension. So see if it's for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you hopefully twice tomorrow.